I don't know if it should be legal. That's not a fight that I would take on.
Mhm.
But I do believe that when you come to your last day and you're standing in front of God, you're going to have to answer what you did in your lifetime.
What's up, man? Yo, I've got to admit in the beginning, I don't know much about your show, but I'm definitely honored and privileged to take part. So let's see what happens.
Great. Yeah, are you actually in the Ukraine?
I am, yes, right in the center of the country, yes.
Do you know a band called No Apology?
Well, are you sure? Is it rock?
Yeah, they're kind of like, they do covers, and they're pretty popular on YouTube.
Is it exactly No Apology in English, or is it translated?
That's what they build themselves as now, but they used to be Shearskin and Zariah, or something like that.
I'm ashamed to say no. I'll make sure to look them up. Are they cool?
Oh yeah, I could play something for you later if you want.
Oh hell yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we could play something.
Yeah, you play the guitar, I bet.
No, actually, I am one of those guys that always wanted to play an instrument, but like in school, I played the trumpet.
Oh, nice.
And you know, when I was really young, I played the violin.
Wow.
You know, here in the United States, in elementary school, what they used to do, I'm 60, so this was a while ago, but in elementary school, what they do is they'd offer you like violin or cello or
to pick something.
some of the woodwinds, some of the weirder orchestra instruments. And then when you get to high school, they introduce like brass and drums and all that good stuff.
Nice. And you opted for the violin?
I guess, yeah, you know, hey, when you're in fourth grade, you know, it's like anything with strings. I thought maybe it was like a guitar or something, I guess. But, you know, I was like, okay, I'll do the violin. And the violin was great. I loved it. It was cool.
I feel like among string instrument, nothing quite beats the guitar. Still probably the coolest, right? Most conventional, the coolest instrument to play to impress others, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Do you play guitar?
I've got an electric guitar. I must confess I am not that good at it. I'm just struggling with free time. But every now and then I hit a bunch of chords. Yeah.
If you get a chance, my son has a band out of Philadelphia, and they're called High Leaf. So the website is highleafband.com. So if you get a chance, check.
Oh hell yeah! I'll make sure to check the aforementioned band from Ukraine. I'll definitely be sure. So when you said you'll play it, I thought you meant like playing it. You know, you probably referred to playing it on YouTube or something.
No, I can play it right now. I don't know if it'll come through to you. Hold on. I wonder if you could see the video too. That'd be interesting. I wanted to play around with this program a little bit because I'm not familiar with it. But I don't know if I like play a video if you'll pick it up. Let me just play the audio, though.
Okay, let's try.
Let's see. I'm just going into my massive library. I've been on the air for 23 years. I'm one of the first broadcasters on the internet.
Yeah, that's what you wrote on your page on that platform, matchmakers.com, right? It's something like the longest running music show on the internet. So it's 20 plus years.
Yeah, I want somebody to, you know, prove me wrong. So if there's anybody out there that's been broadcasting longer than 23 years, I started on September 26, 2000.
Wow.
So, and I applied to Guinness World Book of Records, but they weren't really interested.
Really? That's pity.
Yeah. It's amazing. I haven't made a cent doing this, and there's guys making like $100 million a
year. Exactly. Yeah, you must have heard about that one, Rogan. He's up there. Obviously not for over 20 years, but yeah, the guy is loaded with money for doing what he does, right?
Absolutely.
Usually, guys refer to him when long time shows are mentioned, so normally that's who the conversation goes to. But I'm sure there are plenty of people who've been doing it who just didn't for some reason have a chance to get the spotlight.
Yeah, actually, when I first started doing it, I met the guy who pretty much created video on the internet. There's this guy, his name is Rick Siegel,
Hmm.
and he now is exiled in Spain somewhere.
Hmm.
And Rick was the guy who went from 10 frames a minute
Hmm.
to like 30 frames a second. Microsoft used to send him all their software first to test it. And
Hmm.
he started doing live feeds from New York City back in 1997, I think.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And with him, I did a live feed from a bar in New York City back in 2000. We used to do bands live from this bar in New York City, and he had a bar in England.
Right.
And what he did was he contacted some guys on Wall Street and said, "Listen, you stop using your servers on Friday at 4 p.m. because that's when Wall Street would close, and then you start using again at 8 a.m. on Monday. All weekend, who uses your bandwidth?"
Uh-huh.
And they said, "Nobody." And he said, "Great. What I want to do is put a server up on your shelf."
Yeah.
And he put his server up on the shelf, and we used to broadcast on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Huh.
Me
Yeah.
doing it from New York City, him doing it from London,
Right.
and we'd have I guess there was about 6 7 bands a night,
Yeah.
and we started broadcasting that way.
Interesting. And that was early 2000, you'd say, right?
He started, I believe, in 1999. I hooked up with him in 2000. I met him at a bar that I was at, and he pretty much, can you curse on this show, or are you trying to keep it
Hell
PG?
yeah. Fuck yeah. We
Okay,
do whatever the fuck we
okay.
want. Sure.
All right, so he goes. I go up to him. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing? You're filming bands in a bar. This is awesome. I want to do this. This is what I want to do." And
Yeah.
he goes, "Get the fuck out of here. Go make
Right.
your own money somewhere."
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right. Right.
so he blew me off. So I emailed him, and I was like, "I'm on the same team as you, dude. I just
Uh-huh.
want to get involved." So he's like, "Okay, if you work for me for free, I'll let you do it." So I used to
Right.
go into New York City with my wife, who was my girlfriend back then, and we used to, try and fit in. And the bars hated us because they thought we were keeping people away from the bar, because
Mm-hmm.
they were like, "Why would they come to the bar if they're going to watch the band on your channel?" And I'd be like, "No, no, you don't get it." Rick actually has a website. It's called ricksmusicarchives.com, and he has thousands of bands from the turn of the century
Mm-hmm.
archived up there, from the Acme Underground, the Bull and Gate in London, and there was another place in London too, including some like famous people like Joan Osborne before she was famous. So you might want to check that out if you get a
Oh,
chance. All
hell
right.
yeah, I will.
So here's No Apology. The name of the song is called Ashes. And the reason I found this band was they were doing a lot of cover songs, and I don't play cover music. I only play originals. But they
The
had
Ukrainian
some,
one?
yes, they had some
Mm-hmm.
Christmas songs.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say the Ukrainian women, I mean, this may be a concept that we have here in the United States. Some of the Ukrainian women are beautiful. So the girl in this band happens to be a really beautiful woman. So it caught my eye. I play a lot of women bands on my show.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of why I got hooked up with them. And then I started listening to her, and she's got a really great voice. So the name
No
of the song,
apology, you said.
yeah, No Apology. You're gonna have to go on YouTube to look it up, because I don't know if they have a website. All right, so I'll
So
play a little
they
bit
are
of the song.
pretty underground, yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's cool, but I don't think I can hear it though. That's alright though. If your listeners can still do, that's fine.
Can you hear it?
Nope. Uh-uh.
Okay. All right, so we won't
Yeah.
even go there. But
Okay.
if you get a chance, everybody, now what's it like there in the Ukraine? Because here in the United States, we're thinking that you guys are getting bombed every day, and there's
Yeah.
war all
Yeah.
around you. Is that pretty much the way it is? Or?
Yeah, that is, with exception being that it's not in most of the cities here in my country. It's not like a straight up battlefield like you may imagine in some of those games or war films. There are, however, pretty wild hotspots, let's call them that way, and people, and unfortunately, there are still civilians, and those have it tough here. I'm near the capital. I'm pretty close to the center. Yeah, the missiles land nearly every night, sometimes every day, and it's pretty sporadic and random in terms of where exactly they're going to land, because that's exactly the, let's put it, morality codex of Russian soldiers. They really are not that picky in terms of where to land the missiles. So fair to say that everybody is in permanent danger, and it's interesting because that puts your life in huge perspective. And to us, we've got so adapted to it, we've got so accustomed to it that you do not treat. Because normally, how a regular person would go about his life is, I would imagine, for an average person, it's relatively safe most of the times, right? When you go to a supermarket, you're about to do your groceries, you're not worried about losing your life. Well, here the threat is always present. But other than that, yeah, we've been kicking ass. We've been very united as a nation. We've put aside our political disagreements to a certain extent. And yeah, we've got one goal, one mission is to chase the Russians away, free our country, restore the border, the historical national independency borders to which a lot of countries have agreed. And that's what we're doing to the best of our abilities. Yeah.
Well, here in the United States, I know most people support the Ukraine, but it's funny that you say that most people don't have to worry about going shopping. Obviously, I don't know how much news you get from the United States, but here in the United States, you have to worry about everywhere you go
Mm,
because it appears that people with guns
mm,
are just shooting people in supermarkets and
mhm,
shopping malls
mhm,
and
mhm.
concerts and
Yeah,
uh,
those mass shootings are unfortunately fairly popular, aren't they?
yeah. So we have like the hidden enemy here in the United
Hmm.
States. So
Hmm.
maybe sometimes it's a little better when you know who your enemy is, but
Yep, yeah,
here in the
that
United
is.
States, it could be anybody.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, I was listening the other day to a podcast, and they were talking about the fact that it's. I don't know if that's how relevant in truth it is, because obviously we've got to certainly take with grain of salt everything we hear on podcasts. That's specifically relevant to me because I used to be a big fan of podcasts, and essentially anybody I would listen to, I would agree. And actually, since the war started, that has transformed every single Ukrainian, myself included, also in the context of who you listen and what you take from the person you listen to. So those people were saying that guns numbers in the States haven't changed since like the 50s, the 60s, but the amount of mass shooting has risen significantly, and they were blaming some other factors for that. What would you say to that? Do you think
For
that's
me,
relevant?
I am not a gun owner here in the United States, but I do believe in the Second Amendment. And I do believe that if the people can't own guns, that gives the government a leg up on the people. I think the problem is TV, video games. When you're 8 years old and you think that you can resolve everything with a weapon through video games, what are we teaching our kids? We're teaching our kids that you don't talk to anybody anymore. You don't try and reason with anybody anymore. Violence is the answer to everything, or might makes right. Back in the 30s and the 20s, and here in the United States, debating used to be big. Like if you went to college, you'd want to be on the debating team. And it would be two groups of people taking opposite sides of a subject and fighting for an hour. And then afterwards, they'd go to a bar and have drinks and be friends.
Yeah,
So
the
I
old
think we're,
way.
yeah, I think what we're teaching our kids today is that the resolution to everything is to pick up a weapon and eliminate your problem. And you're never gonna, there's always gonna be problems in life. So what you have to learn how to do is deal with problems. And sometimes, what you have to do is learn how to forget problems. Maybe there's a disagreement you have with somebody, and maybe it's not that important. Maybe you just let it go by. Like somebody cut you off on the highway. Does that mean you need to pull out a gun and shoot
Right,
them?
right, right.
Maybe you just forget about it, and let it go.
For
So
sure.
I
Yeah.
I think I don't think guns have anything to do with people shooting people. It's who's using the gun that has something to do with people shooting people. And another problem we have here in the United States is there was a time when you were mentally ill that the government or the police were able to put you into a hospital so you could get the help you needed. Nowadays,
Hmm.
everybody's worried about, at least the police here are
Hmm.
worried about getting sued or being
Hmm.
called
Hmm.
racist,
Hmm.
or so they're afraid to do the job that they really need to do.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
since the government has all the surplus of army vehicles, instead of the police having a car like I have, they have Hummers and assault vehicles
Mm-hmm.
and assault weapons. And if you're a cop and you were in the Iraqi war, you were trained to kill people first and then ask questions second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think
Mm-hmm.
we need to retrain the police here in the
Mm-hmm.
United States, and they need to learn how that we pay their salaries
Mm-hmm.
and they work for us and they don't work for the government, and they need to help us. Serve and protect is what we need.
Is the talking of defunding the police still rampant in the States? I remember it kind of went off a little bit, would you say 2 years ago? A lot of states were discussed, because I'm kind of deep in American podcasts and just English speaking information sphere. So is it still relevant, and what are your thoughts on defunding in some states?
I think defunding the police here in the United States is being pushed by a lot of the minorities here in the
Yeah.
United States that have been on the raw end of policing. Now, I've been on the raw end of policing too, because I am a pot smoker.
Mm-hmm.
I have irritable bowel syndrome. And for me, I never wanted to take drugs that were going to ruin my liver and my kidney,
Mm-hmm.
all these pharmaceutical drugs that are out
Mm-hmm.
there. So from early age, I learned that smoking a little weed would help me with my stomach issues. So I live in New Jersey, where weed is now legal. So you
Mm-hmm.
can just go to the store and buy weed now.
Wow.
And for me, it's difficult to understand, the defunding process. Because when you look at Chicago, where 20 people are killed every weekend, I think what we need to do is retrain, not defund. I think what we
Mm-hmm.
need to
Mm-hmm.
do is stop hiring guys who come back from war and want to kill
Mm-hmm.
people and are
Mm-hmm.
trained to kill people, and start hiring people that are, not built for that,
Mm-hmm.
which is difficult. It's like saying, like, the Ukrainian army is now going to be the police department. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really work.
Right, right. Yeah, I've just watched. It's a little bit off topic, obviously, but I've just watched that Guy Ritchie recent film. You might have heard about it, The Covenant, I think it's called. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
So it's basically a story about, well, that Biden's law about extracting American soldiers of Afghanistan, and the story is pretty insane, because obviously those soldiers, they would have translators, their own translators, who were the Afghani people, but they work for the Americans, and obviously they were considered traitors by the Taliban coups, or whatever those were called. And it's a story about um, how those translators found themselves in between two fires, so to speak, because once Americans left, they were remained there obviously by themselves, and then they were targeted and executed by the Taliban group. So, it's not taking our conversations, not really taking any musical vector, but that's fine. I guess we can be a little bit more, if you don't mind, free in conversation. So what are your thoughts about, and I've been thinking about it because I don't know much about the process of extraction and whether it's greatly supported by American people. What are your thoughts on Biden removing the army from Afghanistan?
Well, it's funny that you say that. I just released an animation. If you go to animatemylife.com, I released an animation on how every president in my lifetime has lied to us,
Hmm.
starting with LBJ and the Vietnam War, which correlates with what you're saying. Back in 1967,
Mhm.
LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, said that the Vietnamese attacked a boat on August 2nd and
Mhm.
then attacked the boat again on August 4th,
Mhm.
which was a lie. And that's what he used to start the Vietnam War. Richard Nixon lied about Watergate and breaking into Watergate. Um, Ronald Reagan lied about Iran Contra. Bill Clinton lied about sleeping with women.
Mhm.
So here in the United States, unfortunately, our government lies to us pretty much about everything. As far as leaving Afghanistan, I'm embarrassed. It was the
Mhm.
same thing with Vietnam. We had all these people in Vietnam, South Vietnam, helping us,
Mhm.
and then we just left them all there. What
Mhm.
do you
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
the communist governments are going to do
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
these guys that we leave there? they're
And
going to
that's
kill them
exactly what
all.
the film's about. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what the film's about. But the main character from that film, he heroically returns there to pay his dues, because the translator that was connected to him, that he was responsible, he saved his life at a great expense. And it's action. It's an action film, and it's a Hollywood film. But yeah, he returned there and he made the visas for the translator and translator's family, and he rescued them. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
heartbreaking in certain moments.
If I can get anything across to people that are watching your show, is never equate the people of a country with the government of a
Mm,
country. Because most times the government is a bunch of guys that get power and they get blinded of the reality of what the people of the country want.
mhm,
And they go off and do stuff for rich guys. And they're pretty much the bitches of corporate America and not really doing what the people of America would want. I
mhm,
mean, I know that Donald Trump is considered a clown around the world, but I always felt that I every president that I ever voted for was never a Republican or a Democrat, because Republicans and Democrats are just doing what they think that particular group of people want. I always felt that the government was more like a business, and I wanted a businessman to run it and not
mhm,
some political wacko. So
mhm,
the first guy I ever voted for who wasn't a Democrat or who was a Democrat or a
mhm,
Republican was Donald Trump. And they just from the day he got into office, they hated him because he wasn't a
mhm,
part of the boys club. He wasn't a politician. And I think that here in the United States, to get the representation that we need to hire a businessman and start getting these politicians out. I saw Robert Kennedy's son is running for president in
mhm. Yes,
2024.
prominent on many podcasts recently. Yeah.
Yes, and let me tell you what. Here's a guy who comes from a family who was doing illegal things from the very beginning. Their father, his grandfather, was a bootlegger and
Mhm,
was involved with the mafia. JFK, bootlegger, involved with the mafia. Stuffing
mhm,
ballots. JFK's family stuffed ballots in Chicago to win the election. So I think we have to stop with the politicians and we have to start taking back our countries and say, listen, the people of the Ukraine, don't want to be in a war. The people in the United States don't want to be in a war. I think
mhm,
if we have a disagreement, it should be like Rocky. Drago fights Rocky, and whoever
mhm, mhm,
wins, and that resolves the issue. But I don't understand where all the politicians went wrong. I mean, here in the United States, George Washington was probably the only good president because after 2 terms, they said to him, "Why don't you do it a third time?" And he was like, "I don't want to be the king.
mhm,
I just want to go home and grow some weed," because he
mhm,
used to
mhm.
grow weed.
Wow, that's
And
what he said.
excuse me.
Right. That's what he said. Wow.
Well, he didn't say that, but he said, "I
Yeah.
just want to go home."
Right.
And the guy had a hemp farm where he grew
Mm.
hemp.
I bet that wouldn't fly these days. A phrase like that would definitely not
No,
fly these days.
no, no.
Yeah.
And who would turn down a third time for being president? These guys, once they get power, they're power hungry. So, I'd like to see people start speaking up and not let the government represent
Mhm,
who we
mhm.
are. And that's what's great about podcasting, because guys like you and I can say what we think, and then people can watch it or not watch it if they want.
Yeah.
It's up
Yeah.
to them.
Do you listen regularly to any podcasts?
No, I listen to this guy, Officer Tatum.
Huh.
He's a conservative black American who used to be a police officer.
Mhm.
Because I'm kind of in the middle, but I'm kind of like more a little conservative because
Right.
I believe in God. So anybody who believes in God, then right away they're considered a wacky conservative here in the
Mhm,
United
mhm,
States. But I believe in, you know, I didn't have sex until I got married, and
mhm,
I always treated women good. I believe in birth control is not abortion.
mhm,
So if you get pregnant, you should have not have gotten pregnant in the first place. I know sometimes it happens through rape and other things that, hey, but I'm not a big fan of abortion. You know,
The
uh,
left people hate it though, right?
the left people are for abortion.
Oh yeah,
The,
right. I'm
the
talking
liberals are,
yeah.
yeah, and you know, they're for it. Like up until you're 21, you can be aborted. You know,
Yeah, right.
but I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of you taking responsibility for yourself. So what you should do is either wear rubber if you want to be screwing around all over the place, or refrain from that. How about respecting your
Yeah.
girlfriend and life and the, you know, what it's like to have a child? So, you know, I like to be in the middle. Some things I go, you know, to the conservative side. So I listen to this guy. He's called Officer Tatum. I also watch this guy. He's called Beard Meets Food. You ever see that?
No.
He's one of these competitive eaters
No.
where he
Okay.
goes to places and he just
Yeah,
eats.
that's quite a job, isn't it?
Oh man, it's funny. So, and that's about it because I do my show every night. So that takes a lot of time. Then I'm into animation. I do animation. I, you know, I do filming of bands. So I'm kind of caught up in a lot of stuff.
I feel like a majority of people, I think specifically in America and here in Ukraine, they are more centered oriented. They're a little bit more centered, other than far left or far right,
Right.
and also a lot of people do not even think about that. They do not even wish to subscribe to certain, let's call it ideology, because it's like, why would you? But people have always been inclined to take in sides. I feel like we, whether you believe it or not, probably have always been teammates, like team members, like players, right? I don't think we would have been able to survive on our own, like individually. So we are very inclined to take a side, and a lot of people take side and they adopt this group identity, and whatever the group believes, one starts believing. And that's a problem, because I also believe you probably believe a lot of left, well, maybe not a lot, but some certain left like narratives, don't you? Like certain
Oh, absolutely.
freedoms, right?
Like I smoke weed, right? So that's
Hmm.
considered a leftist thing, you know, that,
Right.
you know, I believe that everybody has the right to their body, you know, like the
Hmm.
thing with abortion, I don't know if it should be legal. That's not a fight that I would take on.
Hmm.
But I do believe that when you come to your last day and you're standing in front of God, you're going to have to answer what you did in your lifetime.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, you know, I don't know how God's going to look on that you terminated a life. Now, some people will say, well, Jerry, it's just a cell. It's
Hmm.
not a life. You know, when does it become a life? And I guess you can debate that
Right.
forever.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
is it when it has its first thought? Is it when it makes its first $1,000,000? You know,
Hmm.
when does a person become a person? I don't know. But
Hmm.
it's not my job to judge or know, you know? It's my
Hmm.
job to live my life as a good person,
Hmm.
and hopefully other people see me doing that and go, hey, I want to be like him. I want to have a good life and be a good person.
I also don't
So,
think it's entirely possible to be totally and utterly prepared for parenting. I'm not a father, but I feel like you certainly should take certain steps to prepare yourself to maybe supposedly read some books. I don't know, watch something about it, be mentally, emotionally, financially, not least ready for it. But can we finally say that we are absolutely and completely prepared for anything? I think you become only the most responsible after certain situation has already happened, right? But then, that being said, obviously there are horrible situations in which women find themselves. Yeah. So, but also let's talk a little bit about those men who wanted to become a father and whose women just did the abortion, right? And nobody usually speaks about those guys, right?
well, I have a good story about that. I'm married to my second wife now. When I was 21, I met this woman who said that she was in love with me. And like I said before, I was raised Catholic. So I was raised Catholic Italian.
Hmm.
And my grandparents came from Italy. So I'm third generation American. Um, my parents raised me as a Catholic. So I always believed in treating women with respect. So I never had sex with a woman. I mean, I kissed and messed around, but never really had intercourse until I got married. So I met this girl. She told me that she loved me. We got married.
Hmm.
I had my first kid when I was 25. And then I had another child when I was 26. It wound up after I got married, I found out she was a lesbian
Hmm.
and still liked women. So it wound up one night she tells me, "Oh, we'll stay married, but I'm never going to have sex with you again." Now I'm a
Wow.
25-year-old guy,
Yeah, that's
and I'm
wild.
like waited my whole life to have sex, and now you're telling me you don't really interested in having sex, but you want to stay
Hmm.
married. So we get divorced, and my wife, basically, and all I ever wanted my whole life was kids.
Hmm.
I missed out on my kids growing up. My daughter doesn't talk to me anymore. She has 3 kids. So I have
Hmm.
3 grandchildren I've never seen because my ex
Wow.
wife turned them against me. And like I said, I talked to my son. He lives in Philadelphia and he's in a band, highleafband.com. And,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's very weird. I don't know. Life goes in all different directions and you got to be able to handle whatever it's thrown at
Yeah,
you,
to navigate, right? To
Yeah.
supposedly even thrive amongst chaos. Now, you as a religious person, you are against the premarital sex, I would assume, right?
No, like I said, I
No.
don't judge people. And let me make this perfectly clear that I am not a Catholic. I am not a Protestant. I talk to God directly. I
Mm.
don't need a middleman. I
Hmm.
don't need somebody to guide me to spirituality.
Right, right.
I am more spiritual than religious.
Yeah, that's what I feel a lot of people are. They always, even those self-proclaimed atheists, are also religious, probably to something. Maybe that's a lame argument, but I feel like everybody is religious to a certain extent. It's like we just have to be cognitive of like of who we obey to, because everybody has some sort of gods. I feel like. How do you? Because obviously, I would I be right by assuming that music plays not last role in your communication to God? Because the guitar player of my favorite band, Red Hot Chili Peppers, there is he said once an amazing quote. He said, "Music is the language of God." What would you say in the role of music in your relationship with God?
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, whenever I needed to clear my mind, and music has been a part of my life since my dad. When I was
Mhm.
young, my father, thank God, was into music and into electronics. Like,
Mhm.
um, I had a cousin who was married to a guy who was in the Vietnam War. And
Mhm.
in the 60s, he was based in Germany.
Mhm.
And obviously, that's where all the best reel to reel and cassette players were coming from at the
Hmm.
time
Wow,
in
I
the
didn't know that.
60s, was like Germany. Like we had, I guess basically what they were doing was they were going from Japan to Germany. So
Hmm.
like maybe there was Panasonic and all that stuff that you could
Hmm.
get in Germany. But here in the United States back then, we weren't importing a lot of electronics because we made
Hmm.
them here. We had
Hmm.
companies like Zenith and Emerson that would make electronics here in the United States. Not that way right now. But the best stuff was coming from Europe.
Hmm.
So my dad, I can remember when I was very young, had a reel to reel player and
Hmm.
played every type of music. So yeah, so like what I call my show is therapy because at night I sit here, I smoke a little herb, and I listen to music.
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
So for me, it's definitely a spiritual thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and it puts you on some kind of a frequency that cannot be defined in words. It must be only expressed with the help of notes. And I've always said to everybody, I said, man, the two things, and I've said it on my podcast, two things that I would be proud of presenting to aliens if those bastards landed on Earth is music, because I feel like it's something unbelievably unique. Because it's like, what is even music? Like somehow people created their first instruments. They came up with these patterns that they were able to turn into songs and music and notes, and that's just entirely beautiful process to me. And second thing is a fucking bicycle, I'll be honest, because it's one and only transport that makes you better. I mean, surely car is useful and nice, and it's necessary, it's essential vehicle, but man, I love bicycle. Yeah, so what is even music? I don't even, sometimes I really even fail to imagine
to
what music
me,
is. Yeah.
to me, music is emotion.
Hmm. How horrible would our life be without music? Just imagine what a dim experience of merely existing life would be without music, right?
When I first started my site, I used to go up to people and I used to go, "Oh, do you like music?" Because nobody knew when I started out in 2000. nobody had any idea of when I would say I had a show on the internet. They
Mm-hmm.
thought I was talking like an alien. They had no
Mm-hmm.
idea what that meant. So then the next question I would go is, do you like music? And every once in a while, I'd get somebody that would go, no. But
Really?
pretty much
Wow.
everybody is in touch with music. And let's face it, like rap was tribal music because it's beats, and that
Mm.
was a way to get psyched up for war. I mean,
Mm.
the tribes would sit around and bang drums, and that's how they would get
Uh-huh.
psyched
Uh-huh.
up for war, and
Interesting.
take some
Yeah.
kind of psychedelic drug.
Mm-hmm. 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 Wasn't rap initially supposed to be some kind of a way of protest, like rebellious? Wasn't it something that would always confront, contradict the general narrative, and that's why those black people, they would always express themselves via those lyrics and music? Is that so?
I'm sure it is, because even if you look at the music from the 60s, from the hippies, that was anti-war. So,
Uh-huh.
music is a way of saying something that you can't say. Just
Mm-hmm.
like sarcasm,
Mm-hmm.
or even like some animation. If you look at, like, in the early days of the United States, instead of saying, hey, George Washington was a crook, they would
Mm-hmm.
draw a cartoon
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and try and get their point across. So yeah, I think music is definitely a way of protesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's actually. So, what are your thoughts on separating the art from the artist?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I'm from New Jersey. Never liked Bruce Springsteen. I was always Pink Floyd. And when I was growing up in the 70s, I was Pink Floyd, all that stuff. My brother introduced me to Bruce Springsteen. I went to No Nukes in 1979. I became a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. As soon as Bruce Springsteen started talking about politics, I was done with him.
Mm.
I just,
You
because
couldn't.
Bruce, yeah, he didn't do it through the music. He was trying to preach.
Mm.
Now, like Bob Dylan, I love Bob Dylan, and he's got like what, 90 protest songs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the way you do it.
Yeah, you would not be able to go on with the artist if his personal beliefs will radically changed or contradict yours. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not even if it contradicts mine. I don't like them using the power of their artistry to try and form opinions. If you're going to
Mm.
put it in your song and that's what I get from your song,
Mm-hmm.
then you did a great job. But if you're just popular, like Roger Waters, right? Roger? Is Roger the one with all the problems with the
I have no
anti-Semitic
idea.
stuff? Yeah. The guy from Pink Floyd, Roger
Mm.
Waters, he started saying all this stuff about Nazis and all this stuff.
Mm.
I don't need that, dude.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I'll
Mm-hmm.
take what I can get from your music, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't really think that you have the qualifications to be
Sure.
lecturing
Yes.
me.
Yes. Yeah. Like, who are you? Everybody's got to talk on what they're actually specialists. And it's a big problem when people who've become popular via podcast, for example, all of a sudden start talking as if they are some sort of right qualified specialist in that.
Right.
Interesting. But I also, on another hand, I feel like when an artist reaches certain level, he feels almost some kind of obligation to express his personal beliefs. I feel like it's almost inevitable process. When you reach certain level of fame, it's like maybe some of those artists feel obligation to speak up. Maybe that's how it feels to them, and maybe some others feel like they need it before their fans because, well, honestly, a lot of musicians become more than musicians. They become idols and people look up to them. So, do you think that also comes with certain level of fame when all of a sudden you decide to focus not just on music but on pushing certain agendas?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? If you want to push your agenda, do it through your art. Now,
Mm-hmm.
here's a perfect example of how you can look ridiculous. For 30 years, Gene Simmons went around saying, "Don't get married.
And
You
then he
should be
did.
screwing around." And then the
Mm-hmm.
guy goes and gets married because he was full of shit. He was just talking out of his ass. So
It
these
happens often to a
guys,
lot of non-religious people. Sorry for
yeah,
interrupting.
yeah,
Yeah, like I mean, something happens, right, to those people at certain stage.
yes, yeah. So
Mm.
I mean, yeah, what it is it's control. So like, uh, the perfect example, and the reason why Bob Dylan will be remembered for a long time is because the guy never said anything, and when he did, you can't even understand him because he used to be so wasted. You couldn't even understand
hmm
Bob.
hmm
But you listen to a song like Hurricane, which is about Hurricane Reuben Carter, a black man who got arrested here in New Jersey, in Paterson, New Jersey,
hmm
15 minutes away from where I live, for killing somebody. And probably there's a good chance he didn't do it. But because he was black,
hmm
now did Bob Dylan just get up on stage and start going, "Oh, the black people
hmm
are getting
hmm
screwed"? And
hmm
no, he wrote it into an 8-minute song, and he
Right.
gets his point across perfectly.
Because that's how what he did the best, right? And that's the instruments that he used. He wasn't talking I mean, he wasn't talking in a wrong way, I guess, right? He wasn't expressing his beliefs in the wrong way, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I must. Sorry, it's like it's interesting because it kind of intertwines with what we've been talking about, artists and art. I was balls deep, I must admit, and I'm embarrassed to a certain extent that before the full-fledged war started, before they broke the borders of my country, I was really deep into Russian rap. Certain artists, not a lot of them, like I guess in like in case with a lot of countries, there are a lot of artists who deserve to exist, but they are meh, right? So let's say. And then after the war started, I felt like it's been on the news. It is still on the news. There's nothing bigger of a news than this thing that's happening right now. Majority, 99% of those artists that I listened to obsessively, that I looked up to so badly, they just shut their mouth and they never spoke a word. And to me, that was so embarrassingly painful to just be silent, because at a certain point you can't be silent because you know you've got a huge, humongous fan base. And if you stick and if you continue to remain silent on purpose, to me, I don't care how amazing, how inspiring, motivational your art is, you just cannot, especially if you're a rapper, because that's what rap was initially intended to be. Not to be afraid, right? Not to follow perhaps some standard ways in a way. And they just closed their mouth because they didn't want to lose money, you know.
well,
What
or
yeah.
they didn't want to get arrested. I mean, you know how Russia is. I mean, you could leave the country though. They could have came to the Ukraine and rapped in the
Easy,
Ukraine,
easy,
right?
easy. Well, not
Uh,
to Ukraine. It's arguably not the best country currently, generally, to relocate to. But man, like they got money, they got abilities. Is it better to lose certain amount of income or to relocate to Europe, to another European country, to the States for that matter? A lot of them toured previously in the States, so it's not that they don't have enough money to do it. And perhaps more opportunities would unfurl before them. Perhaps a new horizon would, you know, and people would surely respect them more. But a lot of those they just prefer. So that speaks. And I've been thinking ever since that happened about art and artists, and I feel like I cannot speak, I cannot continue listening to anybody who just doesn't have balls, roughly speaking, you know,
See,
to stand for what you preach.
that's our power. You can support the people that are doing the right things. Like, you know, I didn't know anything about Pussy Riot,
Mm,
and then I saw that documentary, and there it's a girl band in Russia that
hmm
I guess they didn't like what they were saying, and they got arrested and went to jail, and but they didn't stop. You know, they
hmm
still
hmm
kept on doing what they felt was right. So you always have to be, the thing about life is you always have to be true to yourself,
right,
you know.
right, yeah.
And if it costs you stuff, it costs you stuff. Like, I truly believed in podcasting and I poured all my money into this and everything, and I have no money. You know, I'm
Hmm,
sitting here with no money, and there's guys like Joe Rogan who are
right.
making $100 million a year
So what's
off
the
this.
difference, you think? Why do you think some get this clout and fame and money, and others like yourself who've been doing it longer than them? What differentiates, you think?
Well, with people here in the United States, all these stars that can't get acting jobs anymore, they're all becoming
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
podcasters. So they're
Right,
just taking
correct.
their fame from TV, movies, and bringing it over to the
hmm
internet. That's all they're
hmm
doing.
hmm
My problem is I never got anybody to support me or back me because I was always supporting artists.
hmm
And businessmen know they can't make money off of art because they
hmm
don't give a shit unless they're
hmm
buying a Rembrandt or a Michelangelo or who's that other guy now that's big, the graffiti guy. But unless they're buying something that's worth
Are you
money,
talking perhaps David Cho? Not that one, some kind of
uh,
artist.
Banksy, isn't it Banksy or something?
Banksky. Yeah, I might have heard that. Yeah, isn't he Ukrainian by chance? No. I might
I
have heard
know he
something.
was big in like England and Europe. I know he goes around, he started spray painting stuff, and
Mm,
now
mhm,
everything that he spray painted, like they take down the wall and they sell it
mhm,
for all
mhm,
this money. But see,
mhm.
that's how businessmen are. If they know they can make money, they'll support you. So, like when I
Right.
first started, I approached a ton of investors and said, listen, the
Really.
internet is going to be where everybody gets their entertainment from, their movies, their TV. Everything is going to come from the internet.
Mhm.
Everybody laughed at me because nobody understood it.
And you foresaw it, right?
So then guys like me, we proved it. So other people saw guys like me doing it and
Mhm,
said, maybe there is a possibility here. And then obviously, what I kept on telling everybody, because when I started, it was dial up. I said, wait until every house has high speed. Because
mhm, mhm,
I worked on IBM mainframes for banks. So we had T1 lines, which are super fast phone lines. So I understood the potential of having a faster connection.
mhm,
You know, when you had 28.8 or 56K, you know, you could barely listen to a song,
mhm,
forget
mhm,
video.
mhm, mhm.
But I knew that in the future, and people just laughed at me.
Hmm.
And, you know, now it's $1 billion, you know, industry.
What would you have done differently?
I probably wouldn't have done it at all, to be honest with you, because now I'm in a situation where I have no money. I'm 61 years
Mm,
old. You know, nobody cares about music anymore, which that's the other reason why I'm still around, because I want to make sure that music survives. I mean, here in
mhm,
the United States, it's either rap, bad country, or, you know, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, you know,
mm.
bands from the 60s, and that's it.
Rap gets the numbers, doesn't it? Rap really does get the number.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a guy who likes not the violent rap. I mean, there's a lot of violent rap here in the United States. I like the nice mellow rap. I like R&B.
Mhm,
I like all that stuff. But the violent rap and the screamo metal, man, is horrible too. I can't take
mm,
that either.
mm, mm. Who amongst the modern rappers would you pick? Who would be your pick? Like top three, maybe that you would vibe to?
To be honest with you, I haven't listened to commercial
Yeah,
music since 1985,
yeah.
because here in the United States, I graduated high school in 1979. So my music came from the 60s and the 70s. That's where my music came from. In 1982, I found Howard Stern. Do you know who Howard Stern
Right.
is?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Currently an interviewer, also something of a podcaster. Isn't he?
Yes, he
Yeah.
pretty much was doing podcasts on the radio.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found Howard Stern in like the early 80s. So I listened to Howard Stern until he went on satellite radio. And then
Mm,
he started charging people
mm,
for to listen to him. And all us loyal listeners who listened to him and got him to that point, I wasn't going to pay to listen to him because
mm.
he had advertisers. He had money. It wasn't like he needed the money. So I felt a little like, you know,
Schemed.
he kind of screwed me,
Mhm,
you know?
mhm,
So
mhm,
then at that point, uh, iPods were out. So I started listening to MP3s on, you
mhm,
know, so it was all old stuff again. And then I started doing the show probably in early 1997. Now I always went to bars my whole life to see bands. When I was
mhm,
in high school here in New Jersey in the United States, you could go to a bar every night of the week and see a live band. So like
mhm,
I would go to the bar in my town and Twisted Sister would play there.
mhm,
And then I would go to the bar in the next town and it would be Meatloaf because all
mhm.
these guys were starting out in the 70s. Or I'd
Nice.
drive into the city and go to CBGB's and Blondie and the
Mhm.
Ramones and Talking
Wow.
Heads and all those guys were playing there.
Mhm, mhm.
And
What
I
a
was lucky.
time, right?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to grow up during that time, you know.
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
grew up when you could go to a bar every single night, Monday through Sunday, and there would be a live band. Now you can't find a bar with a live band.
Nah, yeah, yeah. Now, though, what was the biggest show you've ever attended?
Probably The Wall at the
Yeah,
Nassau Coliseum, Pink Floyd.
nice. What year was that?
That was 1979. They only
Yeah.
played The Wall in two places, Nassau
Mhm,
Coliseum in New York and the LA Forum in Los Angeles.
mhm,
And that was
mhm,
it. That was with the full band, obviously not Sid Barrett at that point, but
mhm,
that was full Pink Floyd band. And that was right around the time where the Who, uh, I got trampled at the Who show in Ohio happened. It was like a month after that, where I think it was 4 people got killed at a Who show here in Ohio. But I've seen everybody. You know, everybody from that time. So like I saw Pat Benatar in a baseball field. She was playing in a baseball field. I saw the Ramones. I saw Joan Jett. I saw Aerosmith, all when they were at their peak. You know, not when they're coming down now. And some of them are still good.
Have Aerosmith retired recently?
Aerosmith's on their last tour.
Oh man, they're on tour right now. Yeah,
The final tour they're doing right now.
that would be quite a concert to attend.
Yeah, they're actually touring with the Black Crowes. Do you know who the Black Crowes are? But they're like this bluesy band. I actually saw Jimmy Page with the Black Crowes, and they did all Led Zeppelin one time. But yeah, no, I saw Aerosmith like 3 times. They were really good.
I bet a lot of people are heartbroken for them retiring, but also it feels like you've got to know where to go, where to stop, right? You've got to know your limits, so to speak.
I gotta say that the stuff that Steven Tyler was singing is difficult to sing. And when you're 73 years old or whatever he is, I don't know if he could really do it anymore.
Yeah, that plays a part. That definitely contributes to. Yeah. What's your thoughts on Chili Peppers, though?
Chili Peppers, like I said, I don't know a lot because they're the 80s, right? So I have nephews. I know my nephews. It's funny. I'll give you a quick Chili Peppers story. Right around, I think it was St. Patty's Day here in the United States, my nephew saw that the Red Hot Chili Peppers were playing. So he got his father to get tickets. He was like 14 at the time. Got my brother to get.
What year was that? Sorry,
I'm guessing he's in his maybe 10 or 15 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, let's say. So they show up, and it was the Red Hot Chili Pipers.
Oh my!
And it was like some Irish music band.
Oh shit!
But he thought it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Recently, something like that had happened because I've been following them pretty actively, and somebody got tricked and schemed for something fake like that. Yeah, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
My brother was like, it was all Irish music. I couldn't believe it.
Well, he could have seen it considering the holiday, right? So probably something fishy was happening.
Yeah. Like I don't know a lot about, and I do, I've heard their songs and I like what I've heard, but I don't know a lot about them.
How do you listen to music? Do you subscribe to some streaming services, or is it a bit of an old schoolish way?
For me, I won't subscribe to any like Spotify or anything because the bands that I'm interested in don't get any of that money. When you subscribe to Spotify, I play like, let's say, for example, my son's band, High Leaf, right? What they do is they have a pool, and the money goes out by how many people listen to who. So the Beatles will get a big chunk of it, and Madonna will get money, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers will get money. But the bands that I'm interested in, they don't get anything. They could get 20,000 plays, and they don't get a penny. So I find
20 ain't bad, though, No. 20 ain't bad, I feel.
No. Give me $1 a play, right? Spotify. They're making billions. I did this thing about how much all these companies are making, and the bands don't get a penny. So what I do is when I find a band I like, I look at their friends on Instagram, and I look at the other bands, and I go on YouTube, and I follow. So I'm kind of like a searcher. I'm Indiana Jones of music.
Right. And then no way that you're regretting that, because you've said previously that you wouldn't have done it in the first place. I don't think you're regretting. Even, being where you are currently, no occupation, I imagine, right? It's nothing, like no job that you would do, right? This thing is basically all you do, right?
Oh, well, no, actually, I've been trying to find a job. What happened was I've been working my whole time I've been doing the show. I was a computer guy for 35 years. Then what happened was, because when you get old, they just throw you away, and you'll learn this. You're a young guy. But for 35 years, I was a IBM mainframe guy. Then I transitioned into desktop support. But now every kid that gets out of college has a computer science degree. And I never got one of those. I just had experience. So I got kicked out of the computer field. Then I became a chef.
Oh, wow.
And I was a chef at a college, and then COVID hit.
Oh shit!
And they
Yeah.
closed down the college.
Right.
So then when I went back, they cut our hours. So I left that job. So I'm out there looking for a job right now. I took a job 3 months ago to be a game master in an escape room. You know about escape rooms?
Nope. Is that a company? Developers?
Escape rooms it's entertainment where, and you're going to love this because you're in the Ukraine, but they lock you in a room and you have to
Oh, like
solve.
quests.
Yeah. Okay. So they call them
Right, we've
quests
got
in
it.
Europe.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the game master. But what happened was the guy was opening it, and it's taken months to get through the red tape. So I haven't had a job for 3 months. So go buy animatemylife.com and either rent or buy a animation and help me out, everybody.
No, I've understood recently the hard way that I've got to be at most careful with questions that I'm hitting my guests with. Because recently I've recorded an amazingly intelligible and insightful podcast with one person. And we went a little bit off the rails. Admittedly, we did get greatly digressed. And later, after the episode was out, he asked me to either take the episode down or to edit it because we got too political at one time. So I understood that I better be careful, or at least ask if my, let's say, the visitors of the podcast, my guests, are comfortable talking about certain things. So if you aren't comfortable talking about what I'm about to ask you, may tell me. But COVID, though, you said that obviously businesses have taken great damage. A lot of small places got closed. What are your thoughts on that thing that happened? COVID, that is.
So it's so funny that you asked me if it's okay to ask a question after I tell you my first wife was a lesbian, and I hadn't had sex until I got married and all this stuff. So I don't think I'll ask
COVID,
you.
Though, we got to be careful, right?
Nah, not me. I'm on every night. I say a lot of good things and I say a lot of stupid things. What I say about my show is this: it's reality. You tune in, I'm having a bad day, it's going to be a bad fucking show. You tune in and I'm having a good day, it's going to be a great fucking show.
Yeah,
and
like humanly, right?
Yeah,
that's what
it's real. It's real. So here in the United States, COVID was a political game, pretty much, because now it's like it never existed, but nothing changed. We don't have a cure.
It got just cancelled at one point. Like nobody's heard of COVID no more. Are guys still wearing masks in America?
I do, because I'm an ugly guy and I like the whole mask thing. But no, I do when I feel like I need it, because here's the problem with that. Not only am I hearing about there's plastic in the water that we're drinking. Are you getting that information there?
Hell yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
So
yeah, I've heard recently something wild. Somebody said that a yearly consumption of plastic is equal to the size of a bank card. And that is insane. That's imagine fucking just stomping down a bank card like that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So for me, I don't trust the government. And some people might say, oh, Jerry's a conspiracy theorist now. And I'm not. But I'm realizing that you have to take responsibility for yourself. So if I go to a supermarket, and here in the United States, our Asian population, I don't know how many Asian people that you have in the Ukraine, but here in the United States, a lot of Asian people wear masks because they know that China, the government, wasn't going to tell them if they were gassing them or whatever. So they figure, hey, I'll just wear a mask all the time. And
it's prominent in China, right? It's nothing crazy. It's something regular over there.
It's normal. So, and when they come to the United States, they continue to wear masks. So I'm kind of picking up that mentality and going, do I want to wait? Now, here's another thing. Like, I got sick in December here in the United States, and I got really sick, and I swear it was COVID. They didn't announce there was COVID until March in the United States. And it was definitely around. And they knew it came from that lab in Wuhan that they roasted Trump over. But they're saying now that they pretty much are sure that it came from that lab. So I don't trust waiting on the government to tell me to wear a mask. So what I do is, if I'm I won't go to a concert anymore. I will not go to a stadium to a concert anymore, because I don't want to be with 20,000 people for multiple reasons. Diseases, getting shot. I saw that at a concert here in the United States, mushrooms are now legal. Do you know about mushrooms?
Hell, Man, you see that shit? It's all
Okay.
shroomies, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So here in a lot of states in the United States, mushrooms are legal because they're saying
Mm-hmm.
if you have ADD, it's
Mm-hmm.
better than Ritalin. And they're probably right. You're
Mm-hmm.
probably better off taking mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, every drug affects everybody different. So some
Yeah.
guy took some mushrooms, went to an EDM show in the woods somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
started shooting a gun all over the
Mm-hmm.
place, not
Mm-hmm.
realizing that there were people walking around the woods. And he
Mm-hmm.
shot and killed
Is that
like
a real
5
case?
people. Yes.
Shit. I've heard
Now,
about people taking heroic dosage of shrooms and understanding they were gay. You know, arguably that situation is even worse than mass shooting.
well, here's the thing. I've taken mushrooms quite a bit, and it's just going to amplify. If you're a violent person,
Whatever existed in you
right,
previously, right?
right, you're just going to be more violent. So you have
Same
to
for weed,
real,
right? Same for
yes.
alcohol.
hmm So you have to take responsibility for yourself. That's a problem we have in the world. Everybody wants to turn over responsibility to the government and to the educational system. You have to take responsibility for you, nobody else.
Same for washing hands. All of a sudden, washing hands became a thing, a huge thing. Like that, I feel like generally washing hands is a nice habit to possess. Like especially for
Yes.
men, men are highly dirty. Whatever, you know, a lot of shit goes through our hands most of the times. Now, I feel like also you being a pacifist, which I judge you are. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm not
Uh,
for war at all now.
So, what do you think about the necessity to sometimes merely obey? Because I sometimes feel like it's nice to hold your own opinion, firm and strong belief in certain things, but sometimes a man specifically, I feel like must learn how to obey, and that's what a lot of guys go through and learn in army. So, what are your thoughts on just knowing when to, you know, shut it and just obey whatever order you've been given? Do you feel like there's a place for that?
Well, I'm not an alpha male. So,
Hmm.
I've been married twice. So trust me, I've learned to shut my mouth
Oh
sometimes.
yeah, for
I don't know
sure.
if you've been married or not.
Hell no.
But I totally agree with you. I think most of our problems are because guys think that everything is like a war. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
like I said before, if somebody cuts you off and you're driving, let it go. Is it really that
Hmm.
important to the
Hmm.
scheme of
Hmm.
things? Or if you're in a parking lot and somebody cuts you off and takes your parking spot, does that mean you get out with a gun and you shoot them? You got to pick and choose what's important. So
Hmm.
you're never going to win all the time anyway. So let's say you win 60% of the time. Let's say you're better than most people and you win 60% of the time. You're going to have to let 40% of it go. So
Hmm.
you got to pick and
Hmm.
choose at some
Keep
point.
your ego in check. Be humble, right? Remain
Absolutely.
open to certain outcomes and possibilities.
And like you said
Definitely.
before, sometimes you get taken down a road and it's better. Like the Russian rappers, maybe if they left Russia, it might have took them down a better road than they're on
Hell
now.
yeah,
You know?
100%. They wouldn't have been pussies, at least in a lot of eyes, in a lot of people's opinions. They wouldn't have been that pussies, and then
See, I'm a true
is
believer in what Sonny Bono said. You got to be a chameleon. So, like in my life, I drove a hot dog truck. I was a computer guy. I drove an ice cream truck. I learned that you always have to change to survive. If you're gonna just be a stick in the mud and I can't move you, if you're
right.
unmovable, you're gonna break.
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
have to be able to pivot and
Right.
give up something to get something.
Right. That's one of tr- the biggest skills in life. I feel like vitally important for a lot of people to learn to be flexible, to adjust. And a lot of people are too rigid in their beliefs. Again, I don't know why, but for some reason lately I've been really, I don't want to say butthead, but I've been thinking a lot about this thing between atheists and religious people. And you know how militant sometimes those atheists might get, those non-believers. No disrespect to anybody. I love all kinds of people and I hate all kinds of people. I don't think a man should be all, I mean, if you've got an opinion, somebody will dislike this opinion inevitably. But it's just, man, I feel like a lot of those non-religious people don't have balls enough to admit that they may be wrong. And it's one thing, but also a lot of really religious guys that are also rigid in their beliefs. But it's like, at least I do not claim to know everything. And a lot of things in life must be taken by faith. And a lot of people don't know how to have faith in the first place, it feels.
Yeah, I
So,
think I think it's the world that we live in. I like what you said that you don't believe in what they think. It's or you don't like what they think. You didn't say you don't like them. See,
hmm
that's the
hmm
important thing. I mean, I have what I believe in. You have what you believe in. Everybody's different. That's what makes the world great.
hmm
So I don't. You and I don't have to believe in the same thing,
hmm
but
hmm
we have to understand. Like, I think everybody wants to have a roof over their head. They
hmm
want to be safe. They want to have food. So we all have basic wants that we all have.
hmm
And we can find a common ground in that. And then the rest of it is just like, hey, if you're gay and you're into LBGQT, that's great. But I don't want you kissing in front of my face and forcing it on me that I need to be gay.
Yeah, I support
That's
that
where the
for sure.
problem is.
hmm
I
hmm
think you have the right to be whatever you want to be, but
hmm
I don't
hmm
want to be forced to be you
hmm
because it's never
hmm
going to happen. I'm never going to be gay. So you could
hmm
have LGBTQT month, which it is here right now in the
hmm
United
hmm
States.
hmm
You could have LGBTQT day. You could do all that stuff. It's all beautiful. Love is love. I agree with all those statements. But stop trying to shove it down everybody's throat. That's the problem.
Yes, I'm on the same page with you with that. Their counter argument to this would be is that what is it, heterosexual couple, like the straight couple, could easily walk down the street holding hands and kiss. Why can't we? But I think they do, they can, and
Yeah,
they
they
arguably
can.
do it even more, right? But you never see a straight parade, you never see a heterosexual parade. That would have been quite a show to attend, to be honest, but things like that don't happen, right?
Well, actually, here in the United States, because we're kind of prudes compared to Europe, sex has always been hidden. So
Mm,
in the 50s, if you watch 50s TV, the husband and wife slept in separate beds.
mm,
I Love Lucy. Lucy and
mm.
Ricky have separate beds. Mary
Wow.
Tyler Moore. Mary Tyler Moore, they have separate beds. So
Mhm.
sex has always been hidden. If you wanted to see sex, you had to go to a sleazy movie theater in Times
Mm.
Square in New York.
And people will think you're a pervert or weirdo
Right,
for kind,
right.
right?
So
Yeah,
for them
yeah.
to say that, heterosexual, I mean, we're not talking about you kissing in a restaurant or because
hmm
you know what? If I don't want to see it, I'll just turn my head
hmm hmm
if I
hmm
really care
hmm
that much. But I don't really care that much. So it doesn't
What?
really matter.
Yeah. What are your thoughts now on the supposedly, and obviously, probably it's not supposedly. I think it's realistically not enough rights for those minority couples, such as, for example, not having sufficient rights to attend the hospital once your homosexual partner gets hospitalized or something like that, and if your marriage is not officialized, then you wouldn't have the rights. What would be your argument, your counter argument to that? Because I like, just, it's not like I'm setting you up or anything. I think
No.
we understand, we agree the same stuff pretty much. But I like playing those debates in my head just to kind of ping pong certain arguments.
Well, here in the United States, unless a conservative Republican gets elected back in again, being gay, you're equal as a
hmm
regular heterosexual couple now.
hmm
So you
hmm
have insurance. If you're not married to somebody and they're in the hospital, you're not getting in. Period. If you're
hmm
heterosexual or gay,
hmm
because security here in the United States. I'd like to talk about though something that I know more about, and that's race and
hmm
how race works because here in the United States, we've started this thing where if you're white, you're automatically racist.
hmm hmm
So I'm like I said before, I'm third generation Italian. So when my grandparents came here in 1920 to the United States, they came to New York with about $3 in their pocket. When they got to Ellis Island, they were left on Ellis Island because the Irish and the other people that were already here, the Dutch, hated the Italians. So they were left on Ellis Island and quarantined for like 6 or 8 months and treated like shit. Then they were let go into New York City, where my grandmother got a job in one of those sewing factories in New York that treated their people like animals. And it was mostly Italians doing embroidery and sewing, and because that's what the Italians did. So she used to go into work, and the Irish people used to say, because she couldn't speak English, go to the boss and say, fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
and that'll get you in good with the boss. So
Wow.
my grandmother would go to the boss and say, fuck you. And guess what? She lost her job because they
Yeah.
wanted to get an Irish person in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what did my grandmother do? She wanted to learn English. She was
Mm-hmm.
going to learn English because she
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going to let
Mm-hmm.
the Irish people get over on her anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in the 1920s, United States, you came here, you learned the language, you learned
Mm-hmm.
the English. Now we're like, we'll speak any language that comes through because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's
Mm-hmm.
got Google Translate and Babbel.
Well,
No,
otherwise you will be called some titles, right? If you
you're racist, you're this.
yeah, yeah.
But here in the United States, we have to have a language. And if we decide it's Spanish, which I'm not a big fan of, then it's Spanish. If it's English, whatever it's going to be, we have to have one language. Just like in
Mm-hmm.
the Ukraine, you speak Ukrainian, right? But
Yes,
you
of
learned
course.
English because you want to
Mm-hmm.
communicate
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
half of the world because half
Mm-hmm.
of the world speaks English.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you speak it very well. So I don't know where you
Thank
learned
you.
it, but you speak it very
Well, I
well.
do it for a living. Actually, I'm an English teacher. I've been doing it for like nearly 8 years. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. So there you go. So and it's something
yeah.
that interests you. You know, if I want to
Mm-hmm.
learn Spanish, I'll learn it, but I don't really want to learn Spanish
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
guess what? I never learned Italian. Now my grandfather never spoke a word of English to me ever in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I took Italian in high school
Mm-hmm.
and I still didn't retain it. I took 2 years
Mm-hmm.
of Italian because the hottest teacher in school was the Italian teacher. So I
Mm-hmm.
took
Hell
Italian.
yeah, the best motivation ever, man. Those teachers, those language teachers, I feel like it gets like a pendulum. They're either unbearably hot or unbearably ugly,
Yeah,
and it
so
gets both sides sometimes.
so when you're in high school, you're going to go with the hot Italian teacher. So I
Hell
took
yeah,
it
yeah.
and I didn't learn it because I didn't want to learn it. So then, it was a struggle for the Italians. Italian people got hung here in the United States. So my point being, and Japanese people were put in internment camps.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the United States, that's part of being an American, is
Mm-hmm.
fighting your way into the culture and establishing your spot in the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to expect to be compensated for your
Mm-hmm.
struggle, the
Mm-hmm.
compensation is you gaining your freedom here in America.
Mm-hmm.
So to be black and think that the white man held you down or is holding you down, or that's an excuse.
Mm.
You're a strong people. Let me tell you what, there are a lot of black men that I wouldn't go near because they could beat the
Oh,
living crap out
absolutely.
of
That
me.
also applies to the music industry, to financial realm, often, right?
Right. So you're a strong people. You're not a weak people. And to take on the excuse of racism, it just makes you weaker. Be
Mm-hmm.
strong. You guys are strong. You guys have done a great job here in the
Mm-hmm.
United
Mm-hmm.
States since the 1960s. You
Right.
went from not being able to use the same bathroom as me to like marrying white
Mm-hmm.
hot
Mm-hmm.
chicks that I would
Mm-hmm.
never be able to marry. So
And
you've come a long way.
yeah, and that returns to the initial point how some people just prefer to take on certain identities, to subscribe to certain ideologies, groups of people, and that applies to nationalities as well.
Yeah, we had Black Lives Matter here in the United
Mm-hmm.
States. They made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Try and find how many black people they helped.
Hmm.
The head of Black Lives Matters had a like $3 million mansion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where did she get the
Interesting.
money from? So
Yeah, where
always
though?
follow the money.
Yeah, but like, how did they make money? What or who was behind that, in your opinion?
I think they were taking money from the money that they were gaining from white people who felt guilty. Because
Mm.
here in the United States, what the Black Lives Matter did, they were a marketing arm.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they
Mm-hmm.
were, and they made white people feel guilty. And you know what? If I was like 20th generation America, and my parents or my forefathers came over on the Mayflower,
Mm-hmm.
I might feel guilty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because there was abuse with slavery and there
Yes,
was a lot of things that
unquestionably.
happened. But that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't part of my heritage. That was part of the Dutch and the
Mm-hmm.
English that came to America.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
Italians had nothing to do with that. So, there are people that should feel guilty, and should be embarrassed of what their forefathers
Mm-hmm.
or their relatives did to other people. Thank God my relatives weren't a part of that. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Would you have felt the necessity in a way to somehow pay off? If there had been anyhow connecting to you, would you have felt this guilt that would force you to do something to support the movement? Would you have done anything in such case?
Well, with me personally, I'm the type of guy that would give you my shirt. I'm the schmuck who walks down the street in New York City, and every guy with a coffee cup, I'm giving him money.
Hmm.
You want a cigarette? So
Mhm.
I'm always trying to help everybody no matter what. So I wouldn't have done it out of guilt. I would have done it as like, they're going to go take that black guy and hang him. No, get in the
Mhm.
trunk of my car and I'll get you out of here. So
Mhm.
I would have just done it because I'm a human being and you're a human being. And that's all it is to me. You know, I don't see color. I don't see religion. I don't see any of that. I just see you're a blob like I'm a blob.
Mhm.
And we're both trying to make it through this, you know?
Mhm. 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 Do you see anyhow potential in the future yourself changing a lot of your stances on current, situations, beliefs? Do you see yourself transforming radically, perhaps, for certain reasons in the future?
Well, I did go through a major change about a year and a half ago. My dad passed away.
Mm.
So I always hid the fact that I smoked weed. I never really, I talked about it on the show, but it wasn't a prominent part of the show. And I felt here in the United States that people were being thrown in jail for a plant,
Mhm.
something I can throw out my window, and by the grace of God, it'll grow or not grow once it hits
Mhm.
the dirt.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I pick it and I smoke it or I eat it. And it's a medicine. So, I made a major change in that stance where now, I'm willing to go to jail if I have to for what I believe in on that.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
here in the United States, what happened was if you were a corporation and you were making a lot of money in California, now every other state where it becomes legal, those corporations are moving into. So, like my
Mhm.
drug dealer that I bought drugs from for 30 years, my pot dealer,
Mhm.
he can't get a store to sell pot.
Mhm.
He's got the most experience,
Mhm.
but because he's not one of the, they call them multi states,
Mhm.
but because he's not a multi-billion-dollar corporation,
Yeah. Right.
he's not a part of legal weed. He's still considered the criminal. So I'm fighting this deal where, if it's legal, it's legal. If it's not legal, it's not legal. But you
Mhm.
can't
Mhm.
go, it's legal only if the government says that you could sell it.
Mhm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. There should not be probably like a standard, like a criteria by any means.
I never even asked you your name. What's your name?
Bohdan.
Bardan.
Bohdan. It is. Yes. Yeah.
Here in the state that I live in, it's called the Garden State.
Huh.
That's our slogan. We're the Garden State.
That's a
It's
beautiful name.
legal. It's legal to smoke weed. You can go to the store and buy it, but I can't grow it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Which is confusing, right? I don't
Yes.
think it's pretty logical.
If I grow it, I'll get arrested. But I can go to the supermarket, and as long as the government says that this particular supermarket can buy it, sell
Mm-hmm.
it, which means they have to pay somebody,
Mm-hmm.
I can buy it from them. I can't buy it from my friend who's been selling it for 30 years, which I still do
Mm-hmm.
because it's half the price. I buy it from the legal market. I do not buy my weed from the legal market.
Don't you see though bits of logic, however, by them restricting people from growing it? Don't you see a little bit of reasoning behind that?
Well, they try and say that, if you buy from the illegal market, it could be laced with fentanyl, or it
Uh-huh.
could be this. The guys that grow the best weed are the guys that have been growing it for 40 years, the hippies that have been. And you know what kept the quality and it clean? Because you know about the cannabis cup in Amsterdam and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These guys compete. It's like roses. They
Mm-hmm.
compete for the best weed. Who has the best strain of weed? Who has
Mm-hmm.
the best quality of weed? So if you're buying and you do your research and you know where you're getting it from, you know that these guys care. These corporate companies, you know what they're doing here in the United States now? They're going to grow food from cells. They're going to get a
Mm-hmm.
chicken cell and grow a chicken, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be your food. I
Mm-hmm.
don't trust the government to
Mm-hmm.
say that
Mm-hmm.
this weed is good. I still have to do the research. I'll
Yeah.
find my
Yeah.
guy. I'll find my farm. I'll go to the farm. I'll talk to the farmer. I'll see how he loves his plants, how he
Right.
takes care of his plants, and that's the guy I'll buy it from.
When it comes to mushrooms in the context of Amsterdam, I've heard a lot of people say that those regular common shops that you can easily bump into on the streets of Amsterdam, they do not sell quite the same kind of product in terms of how they affect you. What they would usually sell to a regular tourist is something that will give you, let's say, visual effects and audio effects in a way, and they can blow your mind to a certain extent. But something that gives you the result, the outcome, the contemplating at the end of the trip, because I would argue the best part of a trip is what you take out of it, the conclusions, the life transformative experiences. That's not quite what those regular sellers orient to, because to them, I don't think financially they are too interested in selling mushrooms that transform lives, because you don't even want to take mushrooms probably like even every week. It's normally it's a couple of months with a good trip. So I think even in Amsterdam, you've got to go a little bit underground to find something really efficient in terms of how it affects you. What's been your highest dosage of shrooms? Pardon me asking.
Well, here in the United States, it's funny. A couple of years ago, we started getting chocolate bars with mushrooms
Right.
in it.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So,
edibles.
excuse me.
Edibles, right?
Yes. Micro dosing is big here in the United States, where people do take mushrooms every day, but it's just
Yeah.
a small amount. They call it micro dosing. Um, I probably went to a concert and did like a handful. I was always a
Mm-hmm.
big guy. So
Mm-hmm.
I was always the guy where here in the United States, we do these things they're called pub crawls. And there used to be a famous one in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is the town that Frank Sinatra is from. And in the town, there was about 60 pubs. And what you do is you go in each pub and you have a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always be the guy that made it to the 60th pub and drank all of my drinks and drank other people's drinks. So I always
Mm-hmm.
had a high tolerance for drugs and alcohol. I was always the guy that would go to a concert, and in the 70s, wine sacks were big.
Mm-hmm.
So someone would just hand you a wine sack.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what was in it. Could have been mushrooms
Take
in
it by
there.
faith.
Yeah, it could have been acid. But see, that's another thing that you say right there. You took it by fate because I knew that other human being wasn't going to
And
fuck
it's
me.
part of the experience, and it's
Right.
part of the story that you get out of it.
Right, because they were sharing and they were a part of it, and they wanted me to experience what they were experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a beautiful thing. It was awesome. But I've taken probably a handful of mushrooms at once, and probably was messed up for a day or two.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, really? So it hit you pretty bad, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I used to go down the shore because I live in New Jersey, which is on the Atlantic Ocean. I used to go down to the shore in the summertime, which was always a party place.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd just start partying on Friday night when I got out of work, and we'd party until Sunday night until I had to go back to work on Monday. You know how when you're young, you know how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to do some messed up things because in the United States, I don't know how much freedom you have there. There was quite a bit of freedom here,
Mm-hmm.
and you could pretty much get whatever you wanted. I could get peyote, I could get acid, I could get
Mm-hmm.
quaaludes, I could get, so drugs living near New York was pretty prevalent. I could get whatever I wanted.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, so that thing took you out for a good couple of days, you said, right?
Yeah, because not maybe the high, but then if you've ever taken mushrooms, there's always that feeling like afterwards, like it's like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
every part of my body, because
A hangover in a way, right?
I've actually even done angel dust in the 70s. Angel dust was big, and one of the guys I worked with said to me, "Hey, let's go into the city and get some weed." And I went into the city, and he was like, "Hey, I want to
Mm-hmm.
stop somewhere else." So we pull up to this church, and he goes down the stairs of the church, and he comes back, and he goes, "Oh, I got this stuff too." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
what is it?"
Who
And
would
he
have
goes,
thought, right? Most unpredictable place to get that.
"Yes." Oh, in New York, it's great. So, so he goes, "Yeah, it's angel dust." And I'm like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, no, you got to try it." So I had no idea. So I
Mm.
trusted
And
him.
is that something MDMA related?
I think it's elephant tranquilizer.
Holy shit.
and you spray it on like weed, I guess.
Wow.
And we smoked it. And
Oh, okay.
I swear to God, when I came out of that, I had like cuts all over my arms,
Really?
and I had no idea where any of it came from. No idea.
Self-inflicted? Just
Oh,
when
I
this,
had to be. Yeah, because I was at
yeah,
work. Because the guy
yeah.
worked with me. Here's a good story. You'll love this. This is the great freedom of America. When I was young, I worked for a bank overnight in their computer room.
Uh,
So we were 20 minutes away from New York City. So on our lunch break, we would drive over to Harlem. We would get nickel bags of weed and come back and get high and then go back to work all within an hour.
mhm.
And I would take orders for people that worked there because half of the people wanted weed. So
Oh, yeah.
I would take orders for nickel bags and then bring them back. So we would get high on our
Serving
lunch break.
people.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, and it just goes to show too that you can have fun, you can, smoke weed, or let me tell you what, you can't do heroin and function. Forget
Mhm,
about it.
mhm,
It's not
mhm,
happening. But
mhm.
there are certain drugs that you can do, and I don't know if I'd want to be a pilot or a surgeon when I was high,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't want to be a pilot or a surgeon when I'm straight. So,
Yes, 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 for sure, for sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Now, what about taking some of those things that supposedly make one experience the so-called ego death? Have you ever been through that? Do you know anything
no, what
about
are
that
those?
process?
Some of the new drugs or something?
Some kind of MDMA, the heroic elephant dosage of MDMA, when you experience something so much unfathomable and beyond your comprehension, imagination, that you literally die. You've got to be ready. Taking that thing, you have to initially be ready to die. And through that process, I've never myself done that. I've only repeated what other people said. And through that process of ego death, you essentially understand how kind of minuscule and unimportant you are. And I think I'm butchering that because that's the best of I'm explaining that to the best of my ability, but what people go through is that they return entirely different. And very often those things that they see and hear isn't that pleasant. It's not specifically what they would want to see or what they would be ready to see. But whatever the thing, the substance or the plant gives you is probably what you need to see. And surprisingly, on shrooms, a lot of times, specifically on shrooms, a lot of times, things that bothered you when you were kind of sober prior to that are absolutely entirely irrelevant to you when you're on those things. So, but some people, like I've been thinking about that. You see, when an idea gets into your mind, I feel like it's that film. What was that called? Inception. When somebody said that once you plant a little hint of an idea, sooner or later that little seed will grow into something. So I feel like I'm on my way to something like that. But it's often common case with people who experience bad trips because I don't think they were initially probably resistant in the first place. And when you pop something like that, you need to go all in and be ready to observe and obtain whatever the plant is giving you. And I think that's the reason behind a lot of bad trips. People aren't ready, or they think they're ready, but they aren't, in fact.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's all the state of mind that you enter the
Hmm,
trip in
hmm,
that's important. But for me, basically, my whole life, the only drug that's really turned me on is weed.
hmm,
That's my main. Like I said, I was an alcohol drinker. I haven't had a drink in about 20 years now. A, because I have irritable bowel and it messes up my stomach, and B, because I never really liked the feeling the next day.
hmm, hmm,
It was
Yeah, it's
just,
not nice. I don't know what people get out of it, out of
yeah,
being totally hammered.
yeah. So, I haven't really had a drink in 20 years. I used to do a little bit of cocaine when I was younger, but I mean, I saw too many lives get ruined by it.
Hmm,
So it
hmm,
turned me
hmm,
off to that. And that's about it. I mean, I've been to concerts where I got arrested for a roach, and I would go to the police holding area, and I saw gas tanks and all
hmm.
kinds of stuff, and people were laughing at me that I got arrested for a joint when they had all kinds of other heavier drugs. And I never wanted to escape reality or life. I just wanted to enhance it, you know?
Or to test it, to experience, just to check it. I think curiosity oftentimes plays a part in that. Do you believe that you've got to try everything to only after make your own mind about certain things? Or do you think some things, obviously, you don't probably have to first kind of person experience them? What would you
Yeah, I
say?
mean, I agree with the second statement. I mean, I try as many things in life as I can because I want to experience life. But I know not to go 2.5 miles down in a beer can to go see another sunken beer can. I just know, the whole Titanic thing that just happened.
Right. Yep.
So
Yeah, with that
there's certain
submarine.
things that I can just look at and go, you know what? I don't need to do that. That's not what I need to do.
Yeah, but in case with drugs, especially those that are natural plants, the arguments pro are probably more prevailing, let's say, than the arguments against. And it's not about somebody would push back by saying that I don't want to be controlled by a plant. I'm a sentient human being. I'm supposed to be smarter. I've got to push back on a plant. But then it's not man-made, and it enlarges your experience. And so many numerous accounts of positive experiences and transformation that people have had due to those plants. So, right.
If I one time I think I snorted heroin that I thought it was cocaine, and it was somebody said, "Oh, that was heroin." But I've never, I've seen too many people on heroin, and I've seen what it's done to them. So I never said, "Oh yeah, I want to try heroin." Which is, I guess, a poppy oriented drug. Peyote and mushrooms and stuff like that. I've done that over my lifetime, and I've realized that those things make me somebody that I'm not. So when I want to not be who I am, those are good things to take. But I also realize too that, like, if you take them and you go to a concert, you might wind up in another state or another country by the time it's over. So you got to be prepared for that.
Person.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you got to prepare for that. So, like I said, for me, if I was going to say to somebody, "Hey, get involved with a plant," I would say get involved with marijuana or weed. And I don't use the word cannabis purposely, because that's what the corporations use as cannabis.
Yeah.
So that's why
they're
I call
in the
it
plant
weed.
name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That ain't biological, that ain't natural to call it like that. Interesting, right? Yeah. Now, what's in your opinion? What differentiates? What is the difference between those people who get addicted to something heavy and come out of it clean, and those that can never come out of it? Do you think there are a lot of factors to be included in equation, or is it something specifically about the person?
I think it's something specific. I just saw this movie on Netflix. It's called Irene, and it's about an alcoholic. And if it's alcohol, drugs, or whatever it is, you're trying to escape your life. You're trying to escape something that happened to you, something in your life, and you want to get away. When you get over it or you get cured, you realize that you really want your life and you want to be here. So I think it's that simple.
Would you say some people really need to get addicted to something bad so that they come out of it, hopefully, and appreciate their life and value it more and cherish it more? So it's something that they long for, that they need, really.
Well, it has been known to help people, like, certain people, like you could use hindsight, and hindsight's 2020, and you could say a guy like Charles Manson, maybe he should have took more acid. And maybe he would have came out a different person, and he wouldn't have ordered people to kill people. Or maybe Hitler. Now you look at Hitler, and you look at all these documentaries that say this guy was taking all kinds of hallucinogens. Now, did that make him a worse person? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe he would have been a nice guy if he didn't take all that. So I think it goes back to what we said at the beginning, is whatever's inside of you, it's just going to amplify it. So if you're a good person, you're going to be like throwing flowers at people and kissing people and hugging people. And if you're a violent person, you're going to be shooting people. So you need to know what type of person you are.
Do you think the same approach applies to video games, though? Because I think we've touched upon something slightly like that in the beginning of conversation. I might have gotten the impression that you tend to kind of blame video games a little bit for contributing to the general violence that we're observing. Don't you think that's something similar? Yeah,
I blame parents, because here's the deal: video games are going to be there no matter what, which is fine. The problem is, though, that if your kid only plays a game where he learns that a gun will solve all his problems,
and you're
you're brainwashing that kid. There has to be balance. So every time he plays that game, he should play Mario Karts. Or every time he
Mm-hmm.
plays that game, you should take him to the museum and
Mm-hmm.
show him art. Or every time he plays that game for an hour, you should play music for him for an hour. So there has
Mm-hmm.
to be a balance. But if you sit your kid in front of the TV and 6 hours a day, he's shooting stuff for 10 years of his life,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to learn something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I totally side with that. I feel like it's intellectually dishonest and unfair to blame only games.
No, yeah.
Because yeah, maybe it's the same. Like, I mean, it's a big addiction with a lot of people, just like drugs are, and contributing the general chaos of mass shootings and overall violence just to computer games is just a part of it. And uh, it's only a fracture of the whole bigger thing, right?
You have to take
What's happening?
responsibility. When I was a kid, arcades were big. You know, pinball machines and Pac-Man,
Hmm.
and people felt that the people that hung out in those places were scum. That's
Hmm.
where the low part of society would hang out. And when I was a kid, we'd sneak away and we'd go to those places and hang out
Hmm.
there. And I didn't become a bad person because
Hmm.
bad people were there. I mean, one time my teacher, my sixth grade teacher, took me to a pool hall, and my mother showed up and drugged me out by my ear because I was like 12 years old, and to be hanging out in a pool hall, that was considered like where all the bikers and alcoholics would hang out. And she was infuriated with the teacher. But meanwhile, the teacher was just trying to bond with us and
Hmm.
create a relationship. In the pool hall was like right across the street from the school. So he figured,
Hmm.
okay, let's go play billiards, you know? And so it's all perception, but ultimately you have to take responsibility for your life. There are no excuses. You should know what's right and wrong. If you don't, if your parents didn't teach you, then get spiritual and
Hmm.
find somebody who can teach you
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
difference between what's right and what's wrong.
Do you believe that parents, in a perfect world, in a best case scenario, parents should be your idol, somebody that you look up to, ideally?
I do believe that, but like I said, now I had two kids where I had a lesbian ex-wife who did everything possible to stop me from seeing them.
Yeah. Oh,
So
so
my
she had. So those kids are from her, right? From the first marriage,
right from the
if I,
first
oh,
marriage.
so she
So
wasn't that lesbian, turned out, right?
well, what happened was, like I said, both kids are like within a year of each other. So like maybe every once in a while she would throw me one, you know, just to keep
Mm-hmm.
me
Mm-hmm.
around.
Mm-hmm. Dang.
So I guess you know, basically, but you know, I was young and I was raised Christian, and my parents told me you respected women, and you know, you don't sleep with them until you get married, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, so I thought everything was cool. You know, she was like, "Oh, I love you," and all this stuff. So I took her. I'm a guy that likes to believe people and have faith in people. So
Mm-hmm.
I get hosed over quite a few times,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I still get up. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter how many times you get fucked. What matters, and this is from Rocky 3, I
Mm-hmm.
think,
Mm-hmm.
is how many times you get back up again. That's the
Correct.
important
Correct.
thing, because you're going to
Yeah.
get steamrolled a lot of times in life. You got to bounce back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what really matters the most. I mean, the fuck ups are on the way. You know,
Yep.
they're going to happen inevitably for sure. Those bastards are common, right? Make sure that they will be sooner or later. Everybody has just different magnitude. A lot of people think that rich people, have problems. Like, soon as the money gets a little bit better and bigger, the level mistake problems never go away nowhere. They just take on completely new magnitude. And then, somebody who makes millions, hundreds of millions, probably have mortgages with millions. I would not want to have mortgage in the first place, not to say a million mortgage, million whatever mortgage, right? So you know what the biggest lesson that I've been trying to remind myself lately is like, you've got to enjoy your swamp. You've got to, whatever shit you're sinking in, you better make sure to you two things that one must feel necessity to stick to is to try your very best to improve the swamp that you're swimming in, and also enjoy it. And it's very conflicting. These two beliefs are highly conflicting, I feel like. But yeah, if you don't enjoy whatever you're swimming in currently, that's a bad recipe for a very unhappy, miserable life. But at the same time, you must actively and constantly do your very best to improve it. So enjoy the shit, but try to make it better, right?
Yeah, a big slogan for me is change the world. I say it on the show all the time. I have it like in the bottom corner sometimes. And I think we all need to use the internet for like what we're doing right now. Like I never would have met you in my life. You know, in fact, if I believed the politicians here, you know, there's a whole thing where Biden was threatening somebody in the Ukraine to get money to get. I'm not involved in any of that bullshit. I saw you on what is it, Matchmaker FM, and
Right,
you
right.
wanted to talk to people, and I want to talk to people, and I want to learn about other places and other people, and
That's the
I
beauty
want,
of technology.
yeah, and I want to make my life better. So I'm using technology for a good thing. Yeah, AI eventually is going to be like Terminator, and it's going to kill us all. I believe it. I
Really?
believe AI is going to become, what do they call when it becomes alive?
Like sentient or
Yeah,
something?
sentient or something
Yeah,
like that. I
yeah,
think eventually it is going to happen. I think eventually it is going to be the end of the world.
yeah.
And I just want to make sure that people realize that we all basically are the same. We all really want the same thing. I mean, there's a couple of people whose wiring doesn't work too good and they're violent and they don't want the same thing. But we pretty much just want to make it through the world and be as happy as we can be. And that's about it.
Correct. Yes. I don't also think happiness could be achieved as a permanent state. Maybe you disagree with that, but I feel like it comes and goes in waves.
Yeah.
And I think the longing for the permanent state of happiness, call it nirvana, bliss, whatever it is, it's just, I don't think you would
It's
even want it, to be
unrealistic.
honest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
unrealistic. I mean, eventually, you know, if you buy a dozen bananas, one of them is going to go and get too ripe. You
Right,
know,
right,
the
right.
first seven might be okay, but by the time you get to that 12th banana, so, you know, you can't let every little thing, every little bump in the road be the end of the world. You gotta, and you gotta always remember too, like what I always do is like, I've always, you know, Michael J. Fox is the same age as me. When I was, do you know who Michael J. Fox is?
I am embarrassed to suppose that it's a director, Hollywood director, but
No,
I'm not
he's an
mistaken.
actor. He's an
Oh, yeah.
actor here in the United States, and the
Uh-huh.
guy had it all. He was in. Did you ever hear this movie Back to the Future?
Right. Yeah. Sure. Of course. Yeah.
Okay,
Who's he? Is
he,
he the professor?
no, he's Marty McFly. He's the
Oh,
kid.
yeah, that guy. Sure. Of course.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so he's the same age as me. The guy had everything. He had women. He had
Yeah.
alcohol. He had drugs.
Right.
He had party. He was at the top of his game, and he got Parkinson's disease.
Really?
Okay,
Wow.
and he's had Parkinson's
Is it bad?
disease. It's bad. He
Yeah.
can barely talk or stand, or
Wow. Really?
it's bad. And
And
it's
it's
been,
inherited or something, right?
yeah, I'm not too sure. I think it's probably from the food we eat, or they're
Mm-hmm.
poisoning us every day. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing with him is he had everything and he lost it all. And the
Mm-hmm.
guy's attitude didn't change one iota. He's
Mm-hmm.
done everything to try and raise money for Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
Every time he does an interview, he's positive. He talks about his wife and his family. He talks about the good things. He never dwells on the bad things. And whenever I get down, I think of people like that and I go, you know what? I could have it a lot worse than my car doesn't start, or, you know, I can't afford to eat today or whatever. There's a lot of people that have it a lot worse than you do. And you always have to remember that.
Perspective,
Yes.
right? Well, yeah, listen, we unfortunately sadly didn't elaborate on how long the episode is supposed to be, and I'm
That's
heartbroken
okay.
to say that I'm having classes to teach in 10 minutes, so I
All right.
must
Well, here's one
excuse
quick
myself.
thing. You owe me now. Now, next time you're going to be
Yeah,
on my show and we're going to talk
sure.
about
Yeah,
music.
yeah. Oh,
All
hell
right.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I feel like I do not quite qualify as a great music expert.
No, that's
And
okay. But we're going to
unfortunately,
just
yeah,
goof around and we'll do
yeah,
goofy
yeah.
drug
And
music
how do
stuff.
you normally do it? Is it in the form of live streams on some platform?
I do it as a live stream, and it's also
Yeah,
go to bumpskeytv.com. Go check it out, and you'll see what it's all
yeah.
about.
Okay, okay.
All right.
Yeah,
But
I've glimpsed at that. Do you invite guests, or is
well,
it normally like
I used
single?
to do it all the time, but now that everybody has a show and everybody's trying to get
Yeah,
people
yeah,
on, like I
yeah.
was the guy in the beginning that had people on all the time. Now I
Mm-hmm,
don't bother because everybody who's got 4 people watching their show
mm-hmm,
wants you
mm-hmm,
on their show.
mm-hmm,
So, you know, I pick and choose the shows I want to go on. And I don't.
Yeah, but the thing is that after we've recorded, after it's finished, I can edit it up. I can send it to you. If you want, you can just post it. If it doesn't contradict your normal content, I will send you the video. You can post it if you mean to post, or but if you
Yeah,
just forward
I'm
us.
doing a screen record right now too.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
So
Nice, awesome.
I
Yeah,
should be able to pull it from that.
amazing. Yeah, yeah, for sure. That would be great. That would be good. Yeah, it's a lovely platform, Zencaster. It allows you to edit effortlessly, pretty much post recording. So yeah, if you want, I can send you the already connected, like matched episode when I'm
Well,
putting
see, the
two
cool thing
pictures
about
together.
the service I'm using, Vimeo, what they do is they feed it out to Roku. So if you
Mm,
have a Roku TV, do you know what
yeah.
Roku is?
Mm-mm. Some streaming
It's
service.
it's an OTT thing, which is
Mm.
over the top, and people can get the show on their TV. But anyway, you
Oh,
go
really?
teach your class, and we'll
Yeah.
have to take this up later.
Hell yeah, listen, it's been nothing but pleasure. Grateful for having me on. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
it was